Hi, everyone. My name is Murray Lincoln from the Ontario Woodcarver Association. And in this video, we're going to be looking at pyrography. It's our first Zoom session together. And there's about 11 people tonight that are going to share their pyrography work of all different levels. And the comments will be shared, I hope, and that everyone will get something really special out of this video. So as we begin this video, this part of the video, we're going to step into a program that's already in process, in that the computer was acting up a little bit and we were able to record just a little bit of the first part, wasn't able to be captured. So we hope that you consider pyrography now. Thank you so much. I've got it done here. I'll come back to the share again and we'll go back to the same slide.
Okay.
There you go.
Good.
So it's Brian Graham, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm from from the Ottawa club, OWCA club. I see I've got quite a few of our members on tonight.
Sure. Thanks.
And as I said in my letter to you, we have a sort of a pyrography group that usually met every Sunday morning. We had breakfast and then we do pyro afterwards. So that's why we've got about 14 to 18 people that come out regularly in our club. The priestess one there is was done. You can see that I've used a very pointed pen to do a lot of the work on her. And that's done with colored pencils also, and then coated with a couple of coats of acrylic spray paint. I use the non-odor one, the low odor one, so that you can do it in your basement and have no problem. You don't have to put it outside. And we get our boards from a guy up the valley there, and he can do all of the boards for us. Does all that framing work for you, cuts them to any size you want. The one in the middle is a pyro I did back in 1995. I was showing you that I've done that on leather, and it's a deer, a white-tailed deer. And I was telling you that the pattern stays very well, just burning on leather without fading as much as if you have done it on wood. So I've still got that one hanging up at my cottage and enjoy it very much. It's a neat way of doing it. You can tie loops to your leather around a frame. Just pick up a frame in your yard or at the cottage. Sometimes I try to use it with bark on it. And it's kind of a neat way to put it up, and it's a nice big thing for your cottage. On the right side, I guess it's a coarse grained wood, which didn't really take the pen very well. So I had to do a lot of improvising with my strokes. They burned quite heavily in some places and lightly in others. And I added to her pattern a couple of ducks in the pond in the front. So that's my few that I've sent you for the people to take a look at.
Great. And I'm going to, at this point, as we're the first presenter here, is there any comments or questions that you have for Brian? And we've got an expert here, of course, one of those professional types like Holly, but she's so rusty right now, she hasn't done any burning for a long time. But Holly, if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can give us any suggestions here or questions about what Brian's done.
I'm kind of giggling. I just finished a piece today. I just didn't get a chance to submit it to you, and I'm sorry. If you were on my Facebook, you would see it, but I'm sorry, guys. Next time I will be better at it. I'm still learning and about timing and scheduling with children. It's been an adventurous ride, and I'm just getting back into the driver's seat. So, you know, trying to get back into everything and try to fit all the hats on and make everything work. And so far I'm doing really well. It's just, you know, I just 10 minutes late or or I forget that one thing, and I promise to get better. Anyways, I was going to ask Brian actually what he uses for a burner.
Super.
Okay, I'm using, well, I've got two. I use a Detail Master, one of the old ones. And I also use a Colwood burner. And I mainly use a skew and a shader and a writing tip. And then I've got a few other ones that for the dot or for the pointillism things. I use a very sharp one.
Awesome.
I find the Colwood is really a favorite. I would say the Detail Master because it's a heavy duty one. You can burn larger items with that. And so I use them both once in a while.
Wonderful.
One of the things that I would am asking you about, because you did that centerpiece, the one with this on the leather, you say that it's holding up real well. How old is that now? That's
since 1995, so we're talking about 25 years, 27 years.
What I've found with some of the wood burnings I did back probably about the same time as you did that one, there's something called a patina effect, and it looks as if your wood burning, your image is fading, which in fact, mine is happening is that the patina effect takes a place, and I think the way it's been described to me is an oxidization of the wood surface. And you'll see the wood surface starting to grow darker, making the burning look like it disappears. And one thing that I do in wood carving, when I'm carving, I take an older piece of pine, for instance, and I start to carve it into a square piece of pine that goes into, want to make it round. The first cut will be a very dark orange surface, probably down as much as 1/8 of an inch or even more sometimes on some of the pine. And what's happened is the patina effect takes place when that pine changes color. So my wood burning, some of it was done on pine, and it definitely loses the image that way. Has any of the rest of you had that problem?
Yeah, I really have had that problem with a lot of my older ones. As I said, I've been burning for, almost 30 years, and I've lost a lot of the original ones. I might as well throw them in the garbage or the fire because they're so.
The interesting thing, though, is the point in saying that is that leather doesn't have the same effect as the wood does.
No, it doesn't. And in fact, you can get, the only trouble with leather is you have to be very, very careful in burning because you can't make a mistake because it just stays there and makes a, you lose your image and it looks bad. But in wood, you can correct yourself better than you can with leather. Another nice thing about leather is that I have another one that I did of an animal, and if you do it on a very fine leather, it sort of puffs out a bit, so you actually get a 3D effect sometimes with the burning, which is kind of nice because the harder part stays there, but what you burn sort of puffs out, so it's kind of interesting.
I'm going to try to advance here. Okay, George Steves, are you there?
I'm right over here. First of all, I'd like to say, Graham, that was beautiful work you did there. That was really, really nice. It really was quite a display of your professionalism in pyro. Okay, this one here, I've been working on it now for quite some time during the pandemic, and I just finished it a short while ago. This is from the Pyro magazine, the Pyrography magazine of June 2018, and it's a Deborah Pompano again, as is the original artist, and she supplied the pattern, and she had done hers on live edge basswood, and I didn't have any live edge So I had to use a piece of basswood that I got from, like Brian said, from our supplier Bill. And he's our main supplier, and right now my stock is depleted, so I really haven't been doing too much. So this is on basswood, and it's called, I call it my Garden of Eden. It's sort of a springtime wood burning, and it's a little bit of, just a touch of color, but what else can I say? It's the size is, I guess, it's the same size that she had mentioned here in the magazine. It's 9 by 11 piece of basswood, and I also use a callwood burner, which I also enjoy too. And the nibs I used here was similar to what Brian used on his, the shader, the writing tip, and a couple other ones there that I sort of jog between the various tips. That seems to be the biggest issue, trying to get the right tip. But yeah, so that's I only submitted the one. I did submit another one, but yeah, I know I didn't. That really was a disaster. That was a disaster. Oh my gosh! You know why? Is because I was rushing. You know, when you mentioned in your email, if you have anything to show, I said, oh my God, I've only got 2 days to do something, So I was getting stressed out, and I said, oh my gosh, I got to put something together here real quick. So it was looking good right up until I started to do the shading on the sails, and then I ruined it. And I was so upset. I said, "Oh my God!" I said, that's meant for the fireplace." So that's when I sent you an email saying, "Oh heavens, take that one off." And
I think it's good to see this kind of thing, and for us to be honest, all of us have pieces like this. Holly, is there anything you could suggest on that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't throw it away just yet. All it is just not finished. That's all.
Yeah.
You just haven't finished it yet. And that's what I always say to people when they get to the point where they're like, oh, it's time for the fire. I mean, it's just back to the drawing board. So essentially, like, this is a great piece. The line work is there. Everything's there. Your shading is started. All you have to do is work a little bit more on it. I would say if you could go back into it, add a couple more layers, add some more depth, and you could really, really make this into something. I think it's a beautiful piece. I wouldn't throw it out. Have you finished it yet?
Well, actually, I've taken the shading off. I took my X-Acto knife and scraped off the shading, and I redid the sails, which I'm working on right now, and I'm using a writing tip, the same tool that the original artist had mentioned, and I'm using a much lower heat. I find that's my biggest issue with wood burning is shading. I know I've read many articles from various professional pyrographers on how to shade and whatnot, and yada, do this, do that, and the lighting and all that stuff, and but boy, I don't know. I just run into problems like that all the time. As a matter of fact, one piece I did that had a lot of shading, I said, I'm not going to shade this. I said, I'm going to take my watercolor pencils and I'm going to color the shading in. So I sort of cheated a bit, and I said, hey,
George,
that looks great.
George has just suggested, we take a look at the right-hand one that was in the magazine. And if you look at the shading is all different kinds of levels. And one of the other pyographers that we've listened to a lot and listening to it in seminars with Julie Bender, she'll basically do most of her shading before she does the line work. Not all the time, but a good proportion of it. And it's at low heat until you understand what the kind of burning or what the wood's going to take as far as the heat is concerned. And then you shade it out almost like, if you take a look at your picture on the left-hand side, the sail kind of looks like it's a flat with a beveled edge, something like it would be carving.
Mm-hmm.
But in the right-hand side, the sails billowed out, and making the shading goes in further towards the center with just a lighter portion in the middle. And then you add more shading to the outside to make it look rounder.
Right.
Yeah. The sail is the problem on the left-hand side for sure.
So actually, I have a small exercise for you if you're interested, George.
Sure.
So what I would suggest you do next time before you start a piece like this, grab yourself a ruler, make yourself a line, okay, and make a bunch of boxes.
Okay.
And what you're going to do is do a little gradient value bar. So you're going to start with very, very dark and then move to the next box and go just a slightly bit lighter and move to the next box a slightly bit lighter and just keep moving down that way. And what that'll give you is a range of tonal value that you can then use as the basis of your piece. So you can then refer back to it and see if something needs to be darker or lighter based on your pattern. So if your pattern, let's say at the back of your ship or where it's really, really dark, if you look at your photo, it doesn't really have that really, really dark contrast. And that's because it's just not dark enough yet, which would lead me to say that it's just not finished yet. So if you made a tonal range and you would be able to look at the photograph there, you could say, okay, this part of the ship needs to fit in number 8 of this value here, and then apply a number 8 value to your piece, you would see that you would be able to kind of match your image a little bit more to your piece.
Right, right. Yeah, well, that's a good idea, Holly. I've only been doing this for maybe about 5 or 6 years, so I'm sort of the new kid in the block here. But I really enjoy working with Brian. He really has shown me a lot of his skills and a lot of the tricks of the trade, and there's a lot of others in our club too that are very, very good at pyro. But it's just that you know, when I get a piece of basswood, especially a live edge, it's not cheap, right?
No, sure, no, it's not.
No, it's not. So that's in the back of my mind all the time. You know, like I'm paying, you know, like a good money for it. And so as I'm looking at it, I'm saying, oh, no, I can't screw this up. You know, I really, you know, I've got to do a good job in this. So, you know, I really stress myself out, you know, and sometimes I've even used cold pressed paper, 140-pound paper, to do a draft first to see how well it's going to turn out in paper, which is really not the same as on wood, of course. But so before I put the pen to wood, I want to make sure, you know, that I'm doing it right. So I'll have a piece of scrap wood, you know, I'll test it on that for the heat and all. Just, well, basically what you just said there. You know,
George, one of the things that you're facing in trying to make the picture on the left look like the one in the magazine is that is not basswood on the left. That's a piece of probably plywood. Maybe was it maple or?
Oh, the one I did. That's birch. That's birch.
Birch.
Birch, yeah.
And birch burns differently than the live edge cross grain of the basswood.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah. Bass is very soft, and it really absorbs, I guess, the heat a lot more than maybe white birch, because mine it's probably a harder wood, and that's where the different shades of heat comes in, I guess. So I have a piece of scrap white birch that I sort of test on first to see how it's going to look, and but this particular one here, I just hurried too much.
Press that down. It's not.
Yeah, and I remember the you know, I think Brian mentioned to me, he says, you can't hurry in this, George. He says, you got to take your time. You know, it's called patience. I said, yeah, that's right, Brian. But I said, I get so.
I think one other thing it's just a technical thing, is that much of the plywood that we'll buy, especially when I buy the marine plywood or these pieces that are about 3 feet by 3 feet from Home Depot, they've got a glaze on the surface of it. And you need to kind of rough it up with a real light sandpaper to get rid of that.
Yeah, yeah.
That makes a difference.
Am I being heard at all?
Yep.
Yes, it's Brian up in the top corner here. I think a number of us are afraid or don't really want to put a good heavy mark on. That's like the edges of those sails. If they were quite dark, then the others can be rolled into that.
Yeah.
And that we always think you can't go dark. It's too dark. It's too dark. No, it's not dark because the stuff lightens up anyway.
Yeah.
So darkness, putting it in dark generally works out, making it stand out.
Yeah, yeah. I took a piece of scrap wood there this morning, white birch, and I just sort of made just the sail alone, and I've been playing with that. And you're right. I find that darkening it down on the edges there and bleeding it out, you know, or bleeding the shading in towards the sail, it looks a lot better, you know, and because you get the light. It's just like the picture on the right hand side here. It's looking more like that, and I kind of like that a lot better. Like this I just rushed straight through it, so it really, you know. Anyway, so that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Gord Seeburger, I don't think is on tonight. I haven't seen his name yet. Are you there, Gord? Gord's used the different methods here, especially with the solid burning against the contrast of background, and then using different implements in it. Going to the next slide that he set along the boxes and that he started working on. And Gord has a business, and he's up in Fort Francis, Ontario. He used to be in Peterborough with me, and he moved up there to work to live in that community. His daughter is a nurse in the hospital, in the nursing home, and so he's developing his wood burning skills, but uses a lot of line work. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's great for us to see that kind of thing. All of us have done that in our work. And one thing I stress when I do any kind of pyrography or talk to people about it, there's no right way. There's your way. And then you adapt it, and you'll see something from one of us that you can adapt and put into your work also. And just to move on from that one, I think next one is to Keith Kirkham.
Oh, wow.
Keith, you could step in there to blow our minds with that loon, number one. And I look at it, it just is something that's beautiful to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on. Yeah, that's, there
you are.
I spent quite a bit of time on Pinterest getting, if I see a picture I like, I download it to a file on my hard drive, and that's probably one of the favorites that I've ever found, and that is done on probably, I think, a 1/2-inch birch plywood. I don't really know what to say about it. It's not from a photograph. It's from a drawing, either pen and ink or charcoal or pencil. I'm not sure which, but anyhow, that's probably about the favorite picture that I've done.
I should mention too here for the rest of the pyographers on here that Keith is one of Holly's students a while ago.
Yes, and I'm suffering through this pandemic, Holly, as to when you're going to be back teaching here.
Good news for you, and I'll share that at the end.
Oh, great, good. I could use some good news. Yes.
Now, Keith, on the left-hand side is a Canadian postal stamp, and this is not done stamps the size of a stamp. I've seen it in real life. It's bigger.
That's right. And actually, this is the first of, I did 2 versions of this. And this one is on a piece of plywood. The second one that I did as a a painter's panel, or I think they're also called cradle boards. And what that is a piece of birch or basswood ply over top of a pine frame around the edge. And with the pine frame, it was something like 1x2 pine. I was able to draw in the serrations on the edge of the stamp and actually drill through them on with a drill, and then cut the edges off with cut through the centers of the serrations with a bandsaw, and it looked like a real stamp, except it was probably 9x12 or 8x12, something like that. So anyhow, and it's I got the idea from, I think, probably many of you that have seen Laura Irish patterns. She loves to do stamps, and I kind of got the desire from her examples, but I thought, why not do a Canadian stamp? And that's probably one of our most famous stamps.
There's one comment I would make on that, Keith, is for others to watch, if you look at the stamp around the edge, you can see at the top right-hand side and some at the bottom below the glare of the camera or the light behind. It's very difficult to make wood all the same color when you're burning black, because wood's different as it goes along, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Other than painting, that's one of the, now we're going to go to the next slide. I think you got another one here. These two beauties.
Okay. I don't have an awful lot to say about the one on the left. The I guess it's a mill house. And anyhow, it's just one of the ones that I've done. The one on the right, the bottom, the barn, was I was fortunate enough to get a red ribbon for that at the Niagara Wood Show, and that would probably be 3 years or so ago. It's probably, I think, of all the pieces I've done, that's my favorite.
It's a nice piece.
Yeah, that's done on some live edge basswood. I don't know. It was very painstaking to do. There's lots of shading work incorporated in there, line work. Just
the way it's done around the silo, brought those round lines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that was one of the things that I've learned to do, and again, that was done from a photograph on Pinterest. One of the things that I've learned to do probably after I did this was when you're working from a photograph, that to pay very, very careful attention to the detail on the photograph. And the latest lessons that I've taken, the instructor, one of her rules is that you keep a copy, a printed picture of it with the photograph on it, and fold it up so that it's right beside the area that you're working on. And she is extremely strict about that, and for good reason too.
Just to mention here for all of us that Keith is good and does well with the actual architectural part of it. He is a real detailist on that part. So there's a 1-point perspective and sometimes 2-point perspective when you do the drawing. And both of these particular pieces have got some very strong indications of that shade, the fading away, the concept of looking at the building is not just square anymore, but it's a contour, it's a depth to it. There's a lot of shingles on that barn. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say one of these things that I believe I was a judge for this one.
You were.
So one of the things I really, really loved about this piece in relation to some of Keith's work in the past, some of the Keith's works were very flat. They didn't have that 2 dimension. And as Maria was saying, this one had a lot of depth in it. And as you can see, you're going to hear me talk about tonal range a lot. If you look at it, you can see that there's a really great variation in range. And it goes from really, really dark and black near the silo. And then he has like some nice medium tones in the bricks and in the grass, and he's got some other stuff. And the beautiful part about the range that he has is you can find it throughout the whole piece. It's not just in one spot. And I think he did a really great job of going from really, really dark to really, really light. And you know, I feel like, and I mean, this is just a personal opinion, remember artwork's subjective, but I feel like landscape architecture work is Keith's calling, because he does it like Murray said, he does a lot of detail work in it. It's you can tell he takes a lot of time and effort in his technique. And yeah, you should definitely be proud of these. These are beautiful pieces of artwork.
Oh, thank you, Holly.
But Keith, there's something there that I want you to look at closely. The mill kind of helps to stand out, but you've got trees that are a little bit like marshmallows sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah.
For me, the trees are something that I try to avoid or cover with some other technique. I say that to Holly because looking at that, the large piece I saw you showing down in Niagara Falls, and you had the young fellow that had taken the picture there. Holly seems to know what every leaf and branch and stick and twig that there is in that picture, and she concentrates on each one of them just the equal amount. You blew me away.
I'm a horticulturist. That's my job. So I feel like that's an unfair statement. No, I'm just kidding. I appreciate you noticing the detail that went into that piece. But yes, I may have a small problem with OCD. No.
Any of us are not free of that OCD when you do pyrography.
There are tricks. So here's one. Anybody can practice this, a technique for doing trees and leaves that are in the background of your pieces. Try figure eights. So whether you use a drawing pin or whether you a writing tip, or whether you use a skew and you use the beveled edge of it, whatever you're using, turn it up to a comfortable turn it up to a temperature in which you're comfortable working at a slight, a little faster than normal. Okay, and make sure that's burning the right color for you, and try working in figure eight patterns. And what that'll do is that'll give it the trees the image of leaves in the background, as opposed to just circles or little like round cloudy bubbles. And so I find when you do that, and then of course, when you're layering on top of it and you're getting different layers of those same figure eights, you're able to create a more leafy looking texture. And it also provides that depth that you're looking for. So it creates these natural shadows between the leaves and the patterns and things like that. So don't be afraid to look at a picture and look at what makes the detail itself. Sometimes if it resembles a shape, just do it. So if you have a picture that looks like it has a bunch of triangles on it, just try and draw a bunch of triangles and see where that gets you. Because sometimes doing a repetitive pattern over itself repetitively will give you a texture instead of just making things look flat or soft.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. Any other questions for Keith before we move on?
Yeah, I've got just one. Did you finish this, Keith, with some sort of a varnish or a spray or a protective coating, or?
I use spray finishes, and I can't recall. I think probably acrylic. I put acrylic on this.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say they're beautiful I'd certainly want to protect that for sure.
Yes.
That's very nice. Yeah. Now, once you spray it with an acrylic, will the wood burning over the years still fade?
Yes, it will.
I think so.
They will, eh? Oh, okay.
So the thing about the wood in general is that it naturally takes the picture both ways. So there's two things that affect it. There is sunlight. So I don't know where you hang your pieces, but they should never be hung in direct sunlight. Direct sunlight will fade it within a year, like so fast. I've had customers come back in tears because memorials that they've had done are just gone. And the other thing that you have to look at is the tannins in the wood. And the tannins in the wood actually draw the picture in. And so it actually does disappear within the wood. So unfortunately, and believe me, I've done a ton of research. And if anybody, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have done a ton of research and I still have yet to find a UV clear coat that completely fully protects from fading, because wood does draw the burning in, as well as sunlight and other factors. Oxidization, kind of a look to it, pulls the picture off. So, I'm still working on some stuff. I'm playing with some stuff like double coats and things. I've tried UV clears and then clearing something over top of that. And again, until they sit in sun for any length of time, I have no research to showcase what works and what doesn't, but just know that it's in the works.
Do you use urethane, satin urethane?
Satin urethane, oil, any type of covering and finish, wax, acrylics, lacquers, pretty much anything. It will still fade over time if it's put in direct sunlight.
There is a new product that I discovered using it for carvings and for some pyrography, and it's made by Rust-Oleum. And they have Rust-Oleum, and the can is a white colored can with a big #2 and X on the front of it. And it's supposed to be very high resistance to the UV rays. But mind you, I've only used this for about maybe 2 years now. So I don't have any long studies on it.
That's the same problem here. So anything that's come out recently that does have more UV protectant in it, until the years go by, you can't really judge the product. Now, with that being said, if you leave something outside, it's going to phase the worst in direct sunlight. So, I mean, test panels can be done, and I'm going to be trying a bunch of stuff like that within the next few weeks, especially with summer abroad. And I'm going to be trying to see if I can't find an actual coating that works. And if it does, I'll be the first one to share it with you guys, because I have to say that that's the saddest part about pyrography, is that it disappears. It almost devalues the artwork because nobody wants to put so much time into it and just lose their piece.
That's right.
Okay, move to the next slide, and that comes up Len Cunning. Are you there, Len?
I am, and that is a shame that you actually put me up after that amazing stuff. Anyways, so for me, I started just before the pandemic. I was in Florida, and the person that's on the left-hand side is actually Sylvain Bazinet, which was a buddy of mine that got me into chip carving. So I started chip carving and doing other carving in Florida. And we actually went to a wood carving show, and I won the door prize, which was a Colwood detailer. So it was a bit of a joke because I did the one on the right. I took an afternoon on a Sunday, and I picked it out of, I think it's Sue Waters was her basic woodworking. And I just took half of the picture that she had, and I tried to do it. So I felt it was okay. And then Baz was teasing me, said that, well, until you can actually do a picture of me, I don't think you're very good. So I did the picture of Baz in about 45 minutes to an hour. I took one of his pictures and traced it over, and that's what I came up with. And I'm quite new at this, so all the tips will be well appreciated. I'm looking at trying to figure out practice boards. I noticed I'm writing notes as we go here, so I'd like to know about transfer techniques, how to best transfer something to wood. so that you can burn it after, or are people actually just drawing things? Because that ship, I was blown away. I'm not sure I'll ever get to that point, but
Yes, you will.
I'm looking for courses, so I'll be possibly signing up for courses as well. And I've got all kinds of questions, so I'll probably start emailing people and seeing what I can do. I bought some birch plywood out of I'm not KJP or whatever it's called, and I also have some basswood that I've cut down. So I started with a wood shop built during the pandemic, and I've been sort of dibble dabbling in a number of different things. So wood burning is one of them. And that's about it. That's my story.
Could I just begin? I'll ask you the one on the right. How long did you spend on that one?
I did, well, I mean, outside of tracing it over in, I don't know, maybe 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon.
Okay, just a suggestion here that you need to slow down. And that picture, I really challenge you to try to take that same picture. Yeah. Now that you know the architecture of the elk that's standing there and the tree, you know some of it better than you know other parts of the picture. And if you slow down and work and you get the shapes are all there, but you speed up and try to get done before the 2 hours is up. And I've done that too. It's a real issue with me because I want to get it done. It's part of having the background of being a carver and having to slow down to become a pyrographer. And sometimes just the rump of that elk could take you 2 to 3 hours to get the hair right and the shading right. So it's to slow down. But I'll tell you right now, for the first try, you did a great job on the trunk of that tree, and even the leaves kind of look like they're real.
Yeah, it was. I don't know. I was following the book. I did buy another one of hers, and it's the workbook. So I'm going to try and walk through some of the plans that she has there. She has different grades, like the beginner and an advanced. So I'll give that a try first, and one of
the things I found is that if I work from an actual photograph, the detail is real because it was taken of a real critter. And when I work from somebody else's drawing, they've changed it from the original, or they may have changed it from somebody else that worked from an original. By the time you morph that down, it changes. Now, just as an illustration here, if you've ever been in the quilting world, where people are, the quilters are there. Well, my mother was a quilter, and she did this cute little lady that was carrying, there's patches all over the quilt, and this little girl had a parasol on her shoulder, and she had the parasol, and mom would do it out of different kind of materials. And it was just so neat seeing all those little different girls all over that quilt. I went to somebody else's to a quilting show, and because I do quilting also, and it was so funny. That little girl was a mushroom about 16 times over in that quilt. She was not a little girl anymore because the pattern was borrowed from somebody else, borrowed a pattern that borrowed from somebody else. So working from the original is really, really good to help yourself.
I'll give that a try. Thanks.
And the other comment that I make about the guy on the left-hand side, man alive, you did great to get the features and the proportions, and everything about the face is great. Likely because you worked from a photograph, right?
Yes, yeah.
That really helps.
Yeah.
And so you don't need to be ashamed about this stuff, Len. It looks great.
Thanks.
Keep going and don't burn yourself.
Try not to.
Holly, jump in. And what would you suggest?
I was going to say the same thing. Like, I think this is a great starting point. To take a pen and never have used it and then just jump in and do a portrait. That's not something people usually try. So that's really, really great. And to show that you're not afraid to get in and try something new is even better. Like I said, if you heard me talking to, I'm not sure who it was now. I'm pretty sure it was at the beginning. Was it George or was it Brian? It was somebody about it, about a gradient chart.
Yes.
And making yourself a little ruler. Honestly,
I got my notes.
That's gonna be a big help for you. What it's nice about seeing this is that you weren't afraid to go dark. So a lot of people, like Brian had mentioned, that are afraid to go dark because you can't go back. But at the same time, then they get so afraid that they don't put that depth in there, and they can't really get that that shadow or that those ultimate layers in a picture that make it really 2D. And what's nice about your photographs is that you have that there. So, I mean, just working on some more range, and like, I like that the background in your gentleman on the left, that you have a background on there to kind of set him apart from his what's behind him. And, you know, I think it's great. Again, we're going to talk about line work. Like anytime you're going to do a piece of, like, let's say a portrait or anybody's face or anything like that, really, really watch line work. So what can happen is if your goal is a portrait and you put lines around it, it becomes more cartoon-like. Anytime that you have a hard edge or a hard line, it's going to take away from the realism of it. The less line work you have, like around the shoulders and around the collar, if those were a little softer and you had some shadowing in there, that would bring your portrait to life more. I see you have some in the cheekbones and things like that. If you had carried that right down to his shoulders and in his neck a little bit to showcase that his collar is a little bit, you know, ahead of his collarbone, that would be really helpful. But I mean, and with your tree, same thing, you know, some figure eights, some extra texture, but you already started, and this is a great place to start. I mean, I know people who have tried wood burning for the first time and they would have never tried shading or extra textures. They just draw around the sides. So, I mean, I'm pretty impressed. It's awesome. Good job.
I suggest though, Len, that you take another piece of wood, same size, and redo it. Don't try to fix this one any further. And you will be blown away by what you've known about this picture and what you'll create in the new one.
I asked, you talked about tracing that picture. Is there, I just tend to use a very light carbon paper in tracing, but there is tracing paper. Is that better when you're copying a picture of an animal or whatever, or some
graphite? So graphite paper, not carbon. So when you're researching your materials, okay, if you're going to get it from somewhere, because we're all from a different area, I don't really know exactly where you're buying your products, which is going to be my next question. But anytime that you're looking for something like a good transfer paper, you want to go with, make sure that it has a graphite to it and not carbon. Carbon is ink, graphite is pencil. Carbon you cannot erase, and graphite you can. The other contributing factor to graphite paper is the wax content. So if you buy a really good concentrated graphite paper, it may have a lot of wax on it. The more wax, the harder it is to get off your photo. I don't mean good, a bad. A bad graphite paper has a lot of wax content, and therefore you cannot get it off your piece as easily as if you get something that's a higher quality. So in other words, if you find transfer graphite paper at the dollar store, it may have a higher wax content than graphite. And at that point, you won't be able to erase it. And also be careful of how hard you're pressing. If you are pressing extremely hard, more graphite goes onto your piece. It's now into the wood, can even create divots and ruts inside your artwork. It's almost impossible to get out. So just be very careful of those things when transferring. And yes,
that at an art supply store?
Yeah, you can get it at art supply stores. You can order it on Amazon. You can get it at Lee Valley. Lee Valley so far has been the best quality that I have found. I've purchased
Michael's?
Sorry?
Michael's?
Yes, you can get it at Michael's. It's just very expensive there. So for like a small sheet, it's like $12. Whereas for $10, you can get a roll of like 12 feet of it from Lee Valley.
If I can jump in, I would echo Holly's comments about Lee Valley. It's not often you associate the word Lee Valley with a bargain, but their transfer paper is excellent quality, and it's a very good price.
Yeah, I recommend them for sure.
I often go to Curry's which is a Toronto-based art store. They go to different places around the community, around the GTA area. But the problem that they face right now is that their suppliers can't get the material to them.
Right.
And so when you go in, the graphite paper or the 140-pound watercolor paper isn't available because it's all sold out.
Yeah. And you know what? Honestly, Murray, I've purchased from Curry's the graphite paper on the search to find the best transfer paper. And actually, Curry's had a higher wax content than Lee Valley's, which made it more difficult. And the only reason I know that is because I was trying to find a cheaper method to provide transfer paper to my students. And that's how I found out that it was kind of not the best. So just keep that in mind. However, I encourage everybody, just with any type of thing, if it's by you and it's an easier product to work with and you get used to it, again, it's all just adapting to your tools, right? So if you live next to Curry's and it's more convenient for you to buy from Curry's, just know that with that higher wax content, it's going to be harder to erase, and therefore just draw a little bit lighter so that you don't have as much graphite onto your wood.
Right. Well, thank you, Len, for that demonstration tonight.
Thanks.
Okay, well, going to the next person, Peter Findlay. You've got two different slides here that we're going to show. One we looked at in the carving group. That'll be the next slide here, but tell us a little bit about these signs that you made. You covered up some words with cardboard or tape for some reason.
Well, I was, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was hesitant to put people's names on it. So the names that I covered up are last names.
We just see the top of your head, by the way. Can you change your camera view? Or sit up higher?
What view should I be on?
Oh,
Okay.
Just tilt your camera down a little, huh?
There you
go.
Hi.
Where am I? I can't see me.
Don't worry about it. We see you.
Okay. These are signs I did for cottages, and I had last names on here, and I was a little hesitant in putting that because I don't know where these are going to end up being shown. So that's why I put the little sticky paper over it. Anyway, signs is not something that I've done a lot of or any of it until I started doing these. In the past, I've done a lot of chip carving, some architectural carving with chisels, and I've been carving for over 60 years, so I've done sort of whatever came along. And up until more recently, I've used wood burning in order to put my signature on, or to date something, or to accent it, or do some lettering. So this was, somebody came along to me. This was the first one I did here, the camper. A lady, I had done a display of some of my carvings, and this lady came up to me after and said, "Peter, would you do a sign for our camper?" I asked her what she wanted in the sign. She didn't really know, so I came up with a few ideas. So this pine tree seemed to work quite well for this particular sign. So I did that one first, and I use a razor tip burner. I also have a hot tip that I used for many years before I got the razor tip. And I have about three different tips that I use. I have a shader, a ball tip, and the razor tip like carvers use for birds. That's what I used up here. Can you see my arrow?
Mm-hmm.
No, you can't see my cursor. So that was the first one I did. And then the second one, this lady came along and said, "Peter, I'd like you to do a sign for me. I would like it to be oval, and I would like it to have a cardinal." So the red cardinal, I did something kind of unusual here where I wanted the wood to show through. So I actually used some aniline dyes. I guess you have to be careful working with them. They're a coal tar base, and they bleed very badly. So the aniline dyes do let the natural wood show through, but they probably work best when you want to dye the whole piece of wood. So I had first done the burn in, And I did a fairly hard outline here because I thought the burning line would limit the travel of the aniline dyes, but it didn't work. I had this cardinal looked like he was on an electric wire. His feathers were sticking straight out because of the bleeding. So I ended up carving out the background. And by doing that, it got rid of that, but it also gave me a more depth. So the two together worked very well. This is a very simple thing here, but for the evergreen tree here, the razor tip worked quite well. I use a Lucidia handwriting font that I find really useful. And this was done with my little chip carving knife. So the combination. Then this one came.
The top right-hand side, that oval plaque, it's a brilliant use of a knot.
Yeah, she told me she wanted she was a knitter. So she wanted a ball of wool and 2 needles through it. I tried to do a ball of wool that I could burn, and I had a couple drawings, but then when I was looking at the piece of wood and I saw that knot, and this is a beautiful tight red knot that's not going to go anywhere, and it's intergrowing, so you have this beautiful grain coming out from it. And so I did my drawing with a hole in it to show the knot, and then my other attempt at a ball of wool, and I emailed them to her, said, which one do you like? And within 30 seconds, she responded and said, I like the knot. So the
knot is a brilliant ball of wool.
This very little wood burning here, but I did the chip carving and the knot. So those are 3 cottage signs that I did not too long ago.
Peter, these as you see my mouse move around on that, you've carved these letters in. They're not just burnt, are they?
No, this is chip carving.
It's chip carving, okay.
Yeah. The same with this line. This line here, the line coming away from the ball, was also done with my chip carving knife. The only burning I did here was the needles.
Okay, this is just a guess here, but this is a group of 7 kind of tree.
It is.
It's situated somewhere on the east side of Georgian Bay.
Yep.
And you're facing south.
Yep. I picked that up.
That's up where Holly lives.
Okay.
We call this the northern windswept pine, and this is the tree of Georgian Bay, the official tree of Georgian Bay.
It's a classic tree.
Yes, it is.
So that was my attempt. I think I picked it off some advertising up in the Muskoka area, and then I translated it into that.
This is a unique
these
piece.
are early attempts at the. So I wanted to introduce the first 3 because it was out of those that this came. This is a fellow that cut a big tree down for me, and when he came to do that, I've known him for a number of years, and he said, Peter, what are you working on now? So I showed him the sign, or the photos of the sign with the cardinal and the windswept pine, and he said, oh, will you do a sign for me? And I said, well, sure. How big do you want it? I said, I can do 16 inches. He said, bigger, 24 inches bigger, 36 inches bigger, 48 inches. Oh, bigger, Peter. I want to put it in my man cave where I have my car collection. And so I said, what, 6 feet? He says, can you do it bigger? I said, no, 6 feet, that's my limit because I can't get it in my studio if it's any bigger. So that's where this came from. And then I said, what do you want on the sign? And he thought about it for a minute. He said, oh, how about my logo on the truck? So the challenge here was starting off with this 4 Seasons logo, and which is 2-dimensional. It's also that a sign painter had done a lot of clip art and put this together in the lettering and made a big decal and put it onto his truck. So he didn't want the phone number because this was going to be sort of in his retirement to remember his business. So I have a number of techniques here. The tree I did with some burning, which you see down here. And the challenge here is that it's all out of one piece of wood. And so I've recessed this back here, but I've kept this part up at the top level. And then I tapered it down so that it would wrap underneath the other lettering. So there's a fair bit of carving that I did here. And then this technique is the first time I've tried to do a tree, and it was kind of fun, but I'm not sure how well it's actually turned out. And again, I have some shading. This is how you can tell where the sun is, Murray, by shading here, and then the rocks. So that was one technique, and then we come back over to here, and the pileated woodpecker. I use my razor tip again and try to do the way the duck people do, or birds do, the feathering. Again, it's an early attempt at it. I thought the claw came out the best of all of it. And I did an undercut under here to create a shadow. And I used acrylic paints. And now that wasn't in the original sign, but I thought that when Tony climbs up a tree with his cleats on, I thought that this pileated woodpecker was really kind of fun. So when he saw it finished and they looked at it, he got all excited. So this has become it's made it a conversation piece. And then he wanted some leaves up here. He had suggested maple, but I had just done an urn for a lady in white oak, and sort of the traditional European oak patterns here. And to get the 3 acorns to stand out, that was a bit of a challenge. So that added a little more excitement to the black as well. Down here, you see the chip carving. That's, again, it's recessed into the wood. And then this part in here, it's hard to see it here. I have larger pictures, but I was focusing on the wood burning here. But this is the classical acanthus leaf and sea scrolls that I had taken a course in Frankenmuth, Michigan many years ago with the well-known George Kielhofer, who is an incredible teacher. And he had taught me how to do the architectural carving. So this is a collection of different techniques all into the one panel.
So I want to ask you a personal question here. Did you get paid about $1,200, $1,500 for this?
More than that.
Wow, it's worth way more than that.
Yeah, I got paid more than that. When he said he wanted to sign, and right away he said, I'll give you $3,000 for it. That's probably not enough, but I figure I got about $10 an hour. But I really enjoy doing it. And this isn't how I make my living. So I've had enough income from my carvings to pay for my materials and pay for my tools and pay the mortgage a couple times. So I don't sweat over. My wife always says I charge too little. But when you start out on this, how do you know what it's worth to do that?
Well, it certainly is a beautiful piece. Thank you for sharing with us. I'm going to go on to the next picture here from Robert Thompson. Did you hang in there tonight with us?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I'm here.
That's a cool looking plate on the left-hand side.
Yeah, it turned out all right. It's better than I thought it was going to, but it was just a plate. I got it at an auction, and I just incorporated the pyro with it. It turned out all right.
Now the horse is something else. I mean, that's a beautiful piece.
Yeah, it was we took this class we had in Ottawa, just a small group of us, I guess maybe 6, 8 people. And it was just a different technique of, and it was all lined. So the whole thing is just vertical cross-section lines. And that's all the shading is involved, just all lines.
The word for that in the art world is cross-hatching.
Okay, yeah.
Holly, what would you say about this one?
I was going to say, I like the technique that you were with your cross hatching that you were trying to create. You can tell it's intentional, which is nice. I try to tell people that if you're going to use a technique and be all one value or whatever the case may be, to kind of break it up and use a technique across the board and be consistent in order to do that. And it just becomes intentional artwork at that point, which is nice. And you can tell it's an intentional style, which is nice. I love that you're getting some darks up and behind the eye and up by the mane here and some really lights on the nose and that. So it's nice. You're working on your range and that's awesome. It looks like again, because it's so hard with computers. Okay. So I'm just curious to know, did you have trouble falling into the grain with your pen?
In some spots, yes, I did.
In some spots, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so a lot of times you have to really, really be careful with grain. And sometimes if you know you're gonna be working in that area, know that it's gonna behave that way. And if you can do that, you can adjust your speed or your temperature to match the grain. And that will help you a lot in that spot so it's not as noticeable in your piece. Because sometimes you can't avoid it, but you can work with it and then make it like it's supposed to look that way. And then you can't tell when you're doing when you're showing your piece. But yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, it's a great piece.
Thank you.
I think that was that you had was Robert would be the last one, or that was the other one.
Oh yeah, that was poplar, and that's the coloring was just right in the grain of wood, so it turned out pretty good for.
We didn't get it quite clear enough with the photographs that you said. I've made, enlarging it by putting it into this program, so it's difficult to see some of the detail that you put into there.
Okay, so my only statement is you've got some great stuff going on and it looks really realistic with your geese. And then in the trees, you went line work. So that, I love the piece. I love the picture. And I love how you use the wood, the natural wood itself within your picture. That's something that if in competition, the judges actually look at. But definitely watch your line work. So if you're going to do realism in your geese, you're going to want to try and create a more realistic tree. Or if you're going to do line work in your trees, you're going to want to do more line work in your geese so that it's consistent among the piece. And then that will help you a lot in making it look like a more unified piece of artwork. Okay. Yeah, for sure. But the way you have it is actually really cool because when you're looking at the geese, it's almost as if the line work in the trees actually frames it and makes you look towards the geese, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's a very unique piece. It's kind of neat.
Just as you do the line work kind of thing only on the trees, what happens here, and you see where my mouse is going up on them, is that the tendency is to be a soft and hard patch, and the tip of your burning tool is followed, kind of got off stream. You'll never find a tree with a lump in it like that, or that part.
Okay.
And I would leave that line if I was correcting that, at least when I'm doing it, is I just would make that as a black part of that poplar tree, just to even it out. So you'll know that the tree is actually straight when it goes up.
Or put a conical shape on it and just pretend it's chaga.
Yeah.
For anybody who knows what chaga is.
Thank you, Robert.
Welcome.
Okay, we go to Sylvain, and he's not here tonight, I don't think, is he? I didn't see his name earlier. He simply, oops, I'll go back to this one here.
I was going to say, I know that word.
This is a box that he did up, and he was just beginning his pyrography work. And it's quite a way to decorate the box up with the same plane that was in the picture.
That's cool.
It's kind of a neat way to do it.
Excuse me.
Now, the rest of them are going to try to go through this a little quicker without a lot of description. What I've thrown in here for you to see in my work is just a bunch of different things that I've done with the different pieces of wood. The top left-hand side is the box I did for my mother's ashes. And it was a very, a lot of feeling in that particular thing, a lot of thought, a lot of burning. And it was a thing that was close to my own heart. So whether it's nice artwork or not, it just was a special one for me to make. This is a small rocking chair I bought from Michael's, and it had a lot of space and white on it. So it's just a mixture of different kind of fantasy flowers all over the thing. Well, plus up the uprights on it are vine work. It was a great summer project outside of the side deck in the shade, and it was just a great thing to do. I like black backgrounds, taking the Dutch shoe and burning in the background. These are down at the bottom, are egg-shaped gourds. They're lots of fun, and I do a lot of things. When I set up my table, I want the kids to come by and talk to me. Well, they love dragons, and the dragon's eye looking out of it, the kind of a caricature. These are a little bit more of a contrast, I guess, with the fact is it's a cartoon style on the left-hand side. A little girl asked me if I could draw a certain princess for her, and that's one of the examples I did for her. Seahorse was fun, and the owl is simply one of the earlier ones. I should have used more shading to give the roundness to it, but I didn't. I just used as much as I could get the thing done. That was one of those hurried jobs sometimes. I was talking to some of the rest of you about. I'll go to the next picture. There's some others. And if you've not tried the gourd burning, the interesting thing about gourd burning is it smells terrible. It's like putting something in your frying pan for your supper time and trying to do a stir fry and get a telephone call and it burns. That smell in the kitchen is what comes out of that gourd when you do it. And so what I've done on the gourd, it just shows you a combination. The color is simply the original color up around the top with my left-hand side is the color of the gourd itself, the background. And by carving down just about 1/16 of an inch, it gives you the lighter color. And it has not changed color, by the way. It's not like the wood. It keeps its color just as it is. So I did the same with the butterfly. And you can see over the right-hand side of the gourd, the butterfly's that size. It's small carving. It's all done by hand. But then what I did on these, try to even these up, I did use a rotary tool to help me with those little circles on the butterfly. Now, some have asked about the patterns and that kind of thing. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this. You can see the dog's picture on the computer, and you can see the finished dog that I did the burning for the couple. The thing about it is that people know what their dogs look like. And what I started with, and I'll try to get this on the camera, there's the photograph that I used. And what I do, instead of using tracing paper, I cut the photograph up. And all the distinct lines in that, you can see it's a piece of paper that's cut out. It gives me the exact shape and size of that dog. What you have to be careful with is not getting a picture that somebody's taken face on, and the snout is way bigger than the head because of the distortion of the lens. And that was one of the things that was interesting about doing it. I do a lot of pet and character pyrography pieces for people. I did it. I'll show you here in a minute, a cat. But on the right-hand side is one of these guppies that has a lot of, it's fighting fish, pardon me. This is an example of using a photograph and coming up with something on this side with a piece of Manitoba maple, which was something else to work with. All kinds of heavier grain and light grain in it. So it challenged me on that part. A ram and his look is there. That was an earlier piece I did too. And here's the examples of a cat. You know, the fun part about cat drawings is that people love cats. I don't like cats at all. But you may be cat lovers, but for myself, having allergies, they're just not one of my favorite critters. And this friend of mine came to me and she said, would you be able to do a picture of a cat for our friend? Our friend has had a cat die and it was her favorite cat. And she's just in a terrible state. So I took the cat's picture on the left-hand side and I did the cat's on the right-hand side. And she presented to her friend to kind of help comfort her. And the lady said, "Oh, I love this. I've had 5 other cats die. Would you do those too?" There definitely is a market in cats. That's as close as I like to get to a cat. Now, coming into this, I go to a blank screen here, but I want to try something a little different with you for this next month. And come out of your comfort zone and take up a challenge in pyrography with me. I have not done this picture yet. Now, does everybody know who Harry Potter is? Yes? Potter is something that the kids love. And actually, when I started carving Harry Potter wands, I was targeting 8 to 12-year-olds, and suddenly the 30-year-olds were buying them, and 40-year-olds were buying them, and then grandmothers at 65 were buying them. And what happened was that the 30s and 40-year-olds used to be 8 and 12. That's how Harry Potter's been around that long time. And it's something that I'd like you to try to think about. If you've got somebody of that age, a younger grandson, granddaughter, this picture might be fun for you to try. So here's an example. I'm going to email this to you as a doc file. And so you'll have the pattern. And this is a pyrography challenge to do a pyro piece of Dobie. Dobie is the house elf. Everybody know what that is? Not likely? Just a few. What happens with Dobie is I give you the pattern and ask you to definitely look at line drawing here. You'll see the lines on the left-hand side, a strong picture of it. And on the right-hand side is a pyrography piece. Somebody did this. I didn't do this, and I'm going to try to do one. And especially because at the table and demonstrations that I do, I have many people come up that just love everything Harry Potter. I thought it was a great example of something that as a group of pyographers that you might like to try. It does push you outside of your realm. And you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, a lot of heavy lines. Don't want the lines to deter you from trying it out. But if you can look at this picture left-hand side and go across to the middle and then to the right, the middle is just another blue shading kind of thing of the same picture over here on the left. And the right-hand side is more of a pyrography piece. And you'll see as you look closely at it, a lot of shading, not heavy lines. So basically, if you start on it and do some of the things that we've been talking about tonight, in some of the shading at the edge and then building it up and layering it up, you'll find that Dobie then is no longer flat. He becomes a round, real person. Holly, want to give us some help on this one. What would you suggest?
I was just going to say, so actually this is perfect that you have this up here. I have this in one of my slides in one of my classes. And so Brett, you're here on the left. And so see the line work. Now, if you add a little bit of shading to it and lighten your lines, like make them smaller, you get a middle piece. And then as you move forward and you take out your line work on the outside, you're left with a more realistic photograph, which I think is fantastic. It's a great way to showcase the different styles that you can have. And really how we were talking about how you can't, there is no right or wrong way. It's your own style and what you're comfortable with. So I think it's great if everybody tries it out in their style and what they like. This could be a lot of fun. The only question I have is whose artwork is this?
Say that again.
Whose artwork is this? Do we have permission?
I don't know who that is. There's a combination of many people have drawn this actually.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's an original photograph, I think, of Dobie from the movie.
From the movie? Okay, fair enough. Yeah, yeah.
So giving credit to the fact that we haven't posted here, but we're just as a video, it definitely we're making acknowledging the fact it's Harry Potter material and not selling it.
My only curiosity, and this is more or less just for information for everybody here, is that if you do not have permission to use artwork off of Pinterest or off of things that you can run it into copyright infringement if you're trying to sell it. Most artists don't care if you use their stuff to create artwork and stuff like that just for your own personal use and practice. But it's always good that if you are going to use it to sell or to profit off of that, you acknowledge the artist and ask them if it's okay. And anybody who's interested in the rule, if you really like to photograph and don't want to gain permission, it's usually a 70-30 split. And so if you can change a picture by 30%, you can reclaim it as your own. So just kind of like some tidbit of information there just to write it down. But yeah, no, there should be no problem with this. I think it's fantastic. It should be a lot of fun.
Just to mention along the lines of the copyright for the lesson that I learned in kind of a difficult way, one of the artists, and he's an artist as well as a photographer, is Glenn Lotz, Canadian wildlife artist. And I have most of his books. I had one picture of his book that I just absolutely loved. And I have a kind of an unusual ability. I can look at something and draw it exactly the same as the person that originally drew it. I can duplicate without kind of a photocopy or graphite paper, that kind of thing. But when I looked at, I had this cross section of a Manitoba maple tree. It had a red heart in the middle. And I thought about it for a long time. Then I did one of Glenn Lotz's pictures of an owl sitting on a branch. And when I finished the biography of it, it turned out fantastic. It's one I did for my wife. But I was carrying it around, and I took it to a show that was very well attended by many, many people down in the Port Hope area. And this lady came up and she was standing looking at this, and she took a picture of it. And then she came to me and she said, "Did you do this?" And it was not a nice way she asked it. I said, "Yes, I was very proud of the fact that I did this." And she said, "Well, that's Glenn Lotz's picture." I said, "Yes, it is." She said, "Why haven't you given him credit?" I said, "Tell me more." She says, "I'm Glenn Lotz's wife." And, oops, I walked into that one. So now if I do put something out like that, I definitely try to credit the person. I wasn't selling it. I was demonstrating, showing the artwork. And so it's just something that we do take into account and think about when we're doing it. I would dare say about Dobie, when most of you do this, there will be more than likely a chance that it will be 30% different than the original. So are you willing to try? Now, a lot of people here said tonight have said, "Well, I really like that picture, so I did that one." And you sat and thought about it for a while. This pushes you to a limit in another area. Maybe you don't like Dobie. Maybe you haven't got a clue about Harry Potter. But definitely the critter that you create will be liked by a whole lot of younger people. So if you have somebody that age in your family that is quite interested in this, this might be a birthday present or a gift to them if you're willing to give it a try. So that's where we're at. I'm going to end the stop share here and ask if there's anything that any one of you have to contribute further about Pyrography tonight, or any questions that you might have that's come up so far.
Yes, it's for Holly. I am curious about that figure 8. I can't run it through my head what is figure 8 and the leaves.
Okay, so I'm working on my ability to share online. So bear with me here. Let's see here. So if I have a piece of paper, let's see if I can't get you on here. Let's see where I am. I'm on.
Yeah, you're on.
This page. Hold on. I'm trying to learn my share screen stuff, but again, drawing online is very different than.
Yeah, move your right hand, not your left.
There we go. Okay, so what I want to see if I can get here is if you can see this. So this is an exaggerated version so that you can see it. See how it's exaggerated?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's bring it down. If you're doing this over and over and over again, and you're layering them over top, there, you have something that looks somewhat like leaves. Now it doesn't look like that at this very second, but let's say I kept going with a different shape and I went with a smaller figure 8. And I kind of put some more figure 8s up in there. And then I did some more figure 8s. And then I decided to go in and I shaded some of these here. And I shaded a couple of these in here. And I shaded in here. What you can get is these little tufts. And then when you create your branches, you can slowly build these little tufts in areas with your figure 8s, and you will get this more texturized puff instead of a cloud shape that usually looks like that. So instead of this cloud type formation, you have a random texture instead. Does that make sense?
It sure does. And this looks to me like a really fancy cross hatching.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's a different technique. Sorry, I should have held the camera like this. Oh my goodness. Holly, what is wrong with you? Okay, there we go. So yes. So if this is your tree and you do your textured, now you can create a couple tufts over here with your little figure 8s there. And you could do a little figure 8 there and just put little stick twigs to it. Right? And as you add detail and texture, it will become more lifelike. Now, this doesn't look like a lot the way that I have it right now. However, if you, let's say in Keith's photo, when he had the big barn right here, right? And this was in the background, these textures would look more leaf-like, right? Of course, an in-focus tree that you can see right up front won't quite look like that. But if it's in the background and it's a landscape photo and the focus is the barn, this is a texture you could use on a tree that's a little bit further back in the setting. Does that make sense?
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
No problem.
You're using a pretty fine tip to go around those small 8s.
But
My pen?
if you were to do that in burning, you don't have your pen, but you have with that one of those small ball tips.
Yeah, you can use a ball tip. You can also use a shader tip. And just, again, it's a shader tip. If you hold it at just the right spot, becomes a ball, like a ball tip. So same idea, yeah. And then the nice part about using something like a shader is that you can still come back in and then just do some light shading and add some depth into certain areas. And that'll give the tufts a little bit more layering into it, which looks really nice as well.
I don't know if you folks are experimental or not, but the razor tip people have a pen, like your pen that you hold in your hand. They have the 2 screws on the end of it where you can unscrew it and put a new tip onto it. They're not permanently mounted. They're not welded in like some of the pens are. And what I found, I was reading from somebody else that tried this, bass guitar strings are amazing. When you get the heavy string and you'll talk to a bass guitarist and they'll say, oh yeah, I break lots of strings. So he just picked out of his guitar case, he picked up the strings and gave them to me. And so I started taking them apart. There's about 5 levels of different kind of wire in the bass guitar string. And I found that one level, and when you take it off, the coils are still tight together. You don't cut it too long, but you do two small pieces and put those behind the screws, tighten them up and turn your burner on. You get some amazing features with the guitar string as it curls on the paper. And I can only imagine, Holly, if you were to take the small bass guitar tip that I made and do those 8s, what an amazing feature that would be. Because the string is already round. I mean, the metal is already round, so you're not digging into your piece of wood, but it's giving you a tremendous new tool to use. And it's experimenting too.
I have my burning machine is called the detailer.
What's that?
The base of it seems to be different from the razor tip. And I don't know where to buy additional nibs and different, like the ball thing I don't have. And it sounds like it would be a good
You
thing.
have Colwood? Do you have the Colwood burner?
Can I place in Canada that gets these?
Yeah, Chipping Away in Kitchener sells an adapter cord so you can use pens from Colwood and also from Razor Tip on either one of their machines. And what the difference is that there's one has a male ending, the other one has a female end on the handle. And so they have an adapter cord or adapter, I should say, that helps you to connect those different things. So each one you can use, you could get one of those ball tips from Razor Tip and use it on a Colwood by getting that cable. The company doesn't sell it, but brain dead tonight. Chipping Away has that.
Where is it? Chipping Away is in
Kitchener.
Thank you.
Kitchener, Ontario. Just look at Chipping Away on the internet, and they're there, and they're real good people to help you. Any other questions or thoughts?
I have a question. Y'all are so young. I just, would you be opposed to sharing your age with me?
Which one?
All of you.
The ages of us. Well, I'll start off first. I started wood carving and wood burning about the same time. Regina, Saskatchewan, on the east end of the city, which was a poor area, and a lot of the immigrants lived there nearby where we lived. We just didn't have any money. The sidewalks were wood, and you take a magnifying glass out and you could create portraits on the wood with a magnifying glass and good sunshine in Saskatchewan.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean you're old. That just means you're skilled.
70 years later, I'm still doing the same thing. 77.
77. Wow.
The luckiest year of my life.
Good for you. That's awesome.
How about Brett?
61.
61. How about Robert?
78.
Oh my goodness, you beat me. How about Brian Bell?
83.
And Peter Findlay?
I will be 79 in a couple months.
Boy, Holly, you're with a bunch of really old critters.
I love it. I love it. I'm so excited.
Kirkham.
I am 69.
69.
How about Len?
56.
George? Got to unmute yourself and tell the story, tell the truth here. George, you're muted. Push the space bar.
I will be 75 next month on June 2nd.
75. Wonderful.
Yep.
And Brian Bell, Brian, I should say.
78 in June.
Okay, is there anybody, Kirkham, I've got you there. I haven't heard you talk yet tonight. It'd be good to give age. Can't hear you. How many fingers?
52. Plus 3.
Okay, is there anybody else there?
What about Holly?
I am
Holly. Yeah, Holly.
only if you promise not to be like, nope, not her. She's not part of our group. She's too little.
I can tell you something about
old.
Holly. Holly used to be young before she had 2 little boys.
You know what?
She's
Now
so young.
she's an amazing mother that just barely keeps up with them.
Just barely keeps up. I had a photo for you guys that I found, and I'm so upset that it's not in my pocket right now. I must have taken it out. I had a picture of me at one of the Niagara Woodcarver show when I was like 10 years old with a piece that I had won one of my first awards, and I was all proud of it. I am 34.
See, I was close. I said 35.
Sorry?
Where do you live?
I live in Seguin, Ontario, but I was born and raised St. Catharines and Welland, so in the Niagara area. Right. I teach for Niagara Falls, Lee Valley to this day. The pandemic's kind of stopped me, but you can find my classes there. And I hope to be sharing within the next couple months, I will have my own YouTube channel and have my own website where I will be offering instruction virtually. So I'm really excited about it. It's literally taking up every second of spare breath I have with my kids and my husband. But yes, I'm looking forward to offering classes virtually, and hopefully all this mess we can get through, and I'll be able to do my live classes again, and hopefully do some live seminars with different clubs. I'm looking to travel around Ontario. So yeah, I'm really, really excited, and I will keep you posted through the club. And if you're interested in following along, you're more than welcome to find me at Burnt by Holly, and you'll pretty much hopefully find me everywhere with that. So you'll find me Instagram, Facebook, and then hopefully YouTube within the next month or so with my channel.
Good.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Now, as I say all of that, you've got to say, you're right now, is it near Perry Sound is where you live, right?
Yes, I'm 10 minutes from Perry Sound Center.
Okay, in God's country, lakes and rivers and trees and...
Yeah, we moved here. What, 7, 8? We've been married for 7 years. So yeah, we must have moved here about 8 years ago. And we came to start my husband's business. He's an arborist. And once we moved here, we fell in love with it. And so we bought our first home and we started our life up here. And so I'm a horticulturist by trade. I was doing horticulture at a resort in about a 45-minute drive from here. But yeah, after I had my first son and now my second, so I've just been a kind of a homebody working on the homestead. I have chickens and rabbits, and I grow big gardens, and I basically am retired at 34.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, we sure appreciate it. And I think that through this group tonight, there's been about 11 or 12 of us here on different times. So you may well get some students out of this group of people. You've done an excellent job tonight to jump in and give us some extra help. And I sure appreciate that very, very much.
No problem. I'm glad to be here. I'm really, really grateful.
Okay, everyone.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Here.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Take care.
Very much.
Thanks, Murray.
Thanks, Murray.
This will be on a video that we'll send you the link.